Shayne Combs here with my brother Matt Combs once again. Welcome to all of you watching on YouTube or listening out there on your podcast app, however it is you get your podcast. We're out there, so if you're doing that, check us out on YouTube, SVC Sports Zone Shayne. But Matt, what an exciting time. This is kind of one of those shows that was on the radar early, coming to everyone on show number 8, our Little League show. What is right? What is wrong with our Little League sports today? And we're gonna come at it from every angle. Going to try to avoid a lot of the different cliches or the different things you hear, and try to dive into this just a little bit deeper. So, Matt, incredible feedback so far on our first 7 shows. It's been a lot of fun. I know this is one that we've been real excited about. Maybe start by telling everybody why, if you're a coach, a leader, working with our youth or working in an organization where the youth is very important to the future of what you do. Why this show tonight? Why so important for everyone to take a listen and make sure that they not only have an opinion, but really approach it with an open mind and maybe adjusting their opinion.
Well, I think if you're in coaching or leadership, especially at the school level, high school level, it's something that you have to deal with. Youth sports is going to be a part of what you have to deal with as a coach, as a leader, both the good and the bad, right? There's a little bit of both. We're going to go over some of those things tonight, but it's there. You have to deal with it, and it's important. It's important to your talent levels as kids get up to you at the high school level. If you're a high school coach, it's a part of that talent development that's crucial at the public school level, and so I think it's something that we have to address, we have to look at, and we have to deal with. I think, as you say on this show, we don't want to beat a dead horse, and I know that there's been a lot of discussion over the years about youth sports and some of the issues with them and some of the things that are wrong or whatever, and hopefully we'll come at it like we try to always do, from a different angle and a unique angle. And I think probably the timing, Shayne, right now is appropriate for this show, because we're at that time of year right now where summer sports are starting, right? Little League, baseball, softball, club volleyballs, AAU basketball. Now, as we're finding out, not all of that's going to go off as normal with the COVID crisis that we're going through. In fact, like right now in our neck of the woods, Little League has been canceled. I think that Little League baseball, now Little League softball is going on in our area. Little League baseball is being canceled, which is, I have a son who's 8 years old who was looking forward to that. So that's been a little bit of a blow, but I do see both sides of it, to be honest with you. I think, this isn't an issue where you can pound your fist on the table and say one side is definitely right or one side is wrong. I think you can make an argument for why we should have had Little League baseball. I think it was an opportunity to lead. I think it was an opportunity to get out in front and be leaders in this area of making your adjustments with the regulations and the restrictions, but still being able to have a season. But I also see the other side of it where, hey, you're dealing with a lot of little kids, a lot of fans, a lot of people coming to the park. There's a lot of moving parts to this. As an athletic director, I'm seeing that right now as we get ready to reopen facilities. There's a lot of moving parts, a lot of things you have to concern yourself with. So I see both sides. It's disappointing for the kids, disappointing for the coaches. And I think the one thing I would say is during, and I don't want to get off on something different here, we're getting ready to talk about youth sports, but during this pandemic, I think the one thing that you've seen is where there's a will, there's a way. A lot of people have used creativity, have used some ingenuity to say, hey, we can still pull this off with some adjustments. I think we could have done that in Little League, but like I said, I see the other side of it too. But so I think the timing of it, Shayne, is right at this time of year to really talk about youth sports.
Well, it certainly is. And I think that's well said on the COVID-19. I think it's a difficult situation. People with maybe having older parents, older grandparents, aunts, uncles, family members, so forth. And it's a difficult thing, difficult decisions and moving forward. But again, as we always try to do on this show, we take what's relevant in our world of sports, no matter what age group it is, and we try to see how it impacts us. And on Expanding the Zone, we just thought that the Little League show made a lot of sense here. And, Matt, this past week, I've been doing a lot of landscaping work here at the house. And I don't know that I would say I was doing it because it's a hobby of mine. I would say it has more to do with a wife that loves her some flowers and loves her some tomato plants and who knows what else. But, as I'm out there, doing a lot of those things, the Little League show and the Little League topic had been on my mind. And I started to think that it kind of makes a great comparison. I mean, when you go to do this landscaping stuff, there's a right way to do it. Then there's kind of another halfway job that you can kind of make it look decent, if that makes sense. Like if you're really going to do it right, you gotta get down in there and you got to get the roots and get the bad roots out, right? The things you don't want, you got to pull them out, and then you got to get some good dirt in there, and you got to plant things and organize it, and you try to do it, put the mulch on top and so forth, and you try to do it in a way that's going to look good, not just tomorrow, but look good next month, and kind of organize yourself for some upkeep in years to come. There's other sections of the landscaping I started to do, and I got to thinking, man, if I just take a little shortcut here, throw a little dirt here, a little mulch here, whatever, it kind of looks pretty good for now, right? So I don't know how that would look. Don't you think there's a little bit of similarity to that in terms of our culture? So as we dive into this topic tonight, I think we have to be careful of evaluating the right now in terms of the future, because when we're talking about our youth, it's not just you as a coach that's going to get them later on, or you as a parent that wants to watch your kid. It's the kids, our future student athletes, in terms of how they're going to go into the classroom, go through their athletic careers, and you want something that has sustainability, some longevity. I've used the analogy a lot of times before. We live in such a microwave society, right? When I know when my wife and I, when we use the crock pot, I really enjoy it. We put the dinner on throughout the day, and you kind of smell it all day, and you're like, man, that smells really good, and ends up being a really good dinner. But in the hustle bustle, the reality of society, we kind of probably more nights than not just pop something in the microwave, or we eat on the go, or we're going to a game or doing whatever. And I think we live in that microwave, gotta have it right now society. We grew up in a time where it was hard enough to find out if your favorite team won. If you wanted to know if your favorite player had 2 hits or how many points he or she had or whatever, that was really difficult to find out until maybe the next day. Where now you can obviously find out just about whatever you want within seconds. So don't you feel like a little bit of what we're going to talk about as we hit 3 or 4 bullet points really comes down to understanding, is what we're doing really good for right now, or what we're doing really good for years and years to come?
Well, I think sometimes that's where the conflict comes in, and the differences of opinion comes in, because I think people looking at it through different lenses. I think that, if you're a coach at the high school level, you're probably looking at this from a standpoint of what does the future hold. You're looking at that, to use your analogy, I want to do it right so I don't have to do this again next, when I turn
like next week.
Right. Enough's enough, right? Let's get it done once, not have to do it again. But I think as a high school coach, you're looking long term. But I think what happens is some of the people running the youth programs, whether they be the organizers of the league, the coaches, it's more of a right now thing. How is my team winning at the youth level? Are we making money? Is our league profiting financially from this right now? Is that, so you have 2 different points of view there, and they don't necessarily lead to the same wants and wishes and thoughts for what it should be. So I think there is a lot of truth to what you said, and I think honestly it just comes down to point of view and what that point of view causes your goals to be.
Well, I love what you said about perspective, and I would challenge the listeners throughout and everything we talk about throughout the entire show, to think about those perspectives and think about, it's kind of what makes leadership so tough as we talk about on them. It seems like we come back to it on every show in terms of, if you line 5-6 different people up with 5-6 different perspectives and you try to get them to see a common goal, obviously there's going to be some trouble there. Let's just dive right into it, Matt. The first thing on my list I had down was, let's just start with participation. So we can sit here and have a debate if it should be the 5th grade, if it should be the 4th grade, the 3rd grade, the 2nd grade, 1st grade. But whatever level that is, no matter what sport you're talking about, to me, the first thing has to be, if a kid wants to participate, he or she, as well as their parents trying to get them involved, have to have the opportunity to do that in some form or fashion, in my opinion. I understand that you have to have adult supervision. I understand you have to have so many different teams or so many different coaches, or facilities might have restrictions or different things, financial, restrictions, whatever it is. But at some foundation of the association or the program that you're running, when we come to the little league level, participation has to be 100% in terms of involvement, does it not?
To me, this is one of those, I almost refer to them as, some of these topics we talk about tonight as non-negotiables, right? If you're going to run a successful little league program or youth league program, to me, participation is right at the top of that list. In other words, if you're running a youth program, and when I say youth, I guess, let me just define what I'm talking about or clarify. I'm talking basically pre-middle school. Anything before middle school to me is youth. Some people may consider middle school a part of that. I'm going to kind of leave middle school on up out of this. All right. So it's basically pre-middle school. And if you're dealing with kids, basically grades K through 5 or whatever, to me, participation has to be available for everybody. If you're cutting at 3rd, 4th grade level, I think you have real issues. I think that's to me sending the wrong message. I don't like the idea, and I'm talking school level youth sports here. Now I understand you're going to have some people that want to go out and create all-star teams. They want to create travel elite club teams at different age groups. I'm talking more from a school perspective here. You can't control all that. All right. Parents can get together, groups of parents, and they can do what they want to do, whether we agree with that or not. But at the school level, if you are cutting kids, then I think it's real important to take a hard look and say, is this what's best for the future of our program? Because if you're going to have a travel team that has your school name across their chest, and you're going to go out and play other schools or whatever, and you're going to limit it to the 12 best 4th graders or the 12 best 3rd graders in basketball, let's say, and the rest of them are going to just be told, well, you're not going to be a part of this. Maybe we'll have a school league for you, which is great. I think that you should do that as just an in-house school league or whatever. But if after that your school is sponsoring a travel team in which all kids aren't allowed to participate, then I think that's detrimental, because I think you're telling kids at the 3rd grade, the 4th grade level that you're not good enough. And when you tell kids that age they're not good enough, I think you really run the risk of interest being lost, numbers dwindling. And let's face it, I think that could hurt you. I especially the small school. The small school, those numbers are going to be so important. Shayne, you and I are involved in 2 totally different situations in terms of school enrollment, right? I'm at a school which in our state's considered a Division II basketball school, where we have, probably 650 kids in our high school. You're in a totally different situation at the school you're in, with a much smaller group of kids to choose from. But if you are cutting kids, and let's be honest, if you're not allowing them to play, you're cutting them. Okay, let's call it what it is.
It's what it is, yeah.
And if you're cutting kids at the 3rd grade, 4th grade, and and you're at a school where numbers are going to be crucial to your success when you're trying to put a freshman team out there, a JV team out there, a varsity team out there, then you're shooting yourself in the foot before you ever get started.
Well, you are, and I guess I would even take it a step further. Once you have given the opportunity for the kids to be a part of that program, whatever it may be, now it even gets into a situation. We're going to talk about things like score and winning and losing and all those different things, but I just want to talk about the foundation of, say, participation, playing time. So if you are going to play games, whatever you think is appropriate for whatever age it is we're talking about, how do you determine playing time? And I think what happens is, volleyball, you put 6 kids on the court, or in basketball, you can only play 5. I grant you, baseball, softball, you can play, usually use the 4 outfielders, so 10 kids. Probably you could technically hit them all. So if you had 13, right, 14 kids, you could just let them all hit. What's your take in terms of, when I take participation in terms of just, okay, everyone's allowed to be a part of it, now to the point of where, if we are going to play games, if we deem in this sport at this level the kids are ready to play games, how do you start to figure out the whole playing time issue?
Well, again, I think at the youth level, then playing time, everybody has to have the opportunity to play. Again, and this comes down to something I know we're going to talk about throughout the course of the night, but it really comes down to what's your priority. What are your priorities here? Is it trying to win? Is it trying to look good? And say, hey, we got the best third grade team in the county. Is it trying to develop
whatever that
talent? Is it trying to Is it trying to teach kids the game, develop skill? It really comes down to what your priorities are, because if your priorities are to develop kids, then everybody's got to play. Now, I don't think you have to sit there with a notepad and down to the second every kid plays equally. I'm not saying that, but every kid should play. You shouldn't take a kid to a game on a Sunday afternoon and him just sit there and never get a shooting shirt off in the 3rd grade. I just don't see that as productive. But now, does that kid have to play the exact same minutes as every other kid? Not necessarily. I think you can fluctuate that a little bit as a coach, but because, quite frankly, there are some kids who skill levels, they're probably not going to be comfortable out there playing every minute of every game. You put them in tough situations sometimes, and embarrassing situations, so you have to juggle that a little bit. But I just think, in terms of participation, there's 2 basic rules. Everybody's got to be allowed to be on the team, and when on the team, everybody's got to play at least a little bit. There has to be a little bit of playing time for every participant when we're talking elementary school.
Matt, I've heard you say before too, a lot of times the goal's to have them play, have them enjoy it, and have them come back out. Talk to us a little bit about that in terms of, if a kid's playing in the 3rd grade, ultimately you'd like to see he or she play in the 4th grade. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Well, the way I always look at it from a varsity coach's standpoint, if I look at a youth coach in basketball, and I know we'll touch on some other sports as well, but I guess this is probably true for any sport, but I really judge that coach basically in 2 ways. Did the kids, the majority of kids, and you're not going to bat 1,000 because some kids are going to do what they want to do, but do the majority of kids learn something from the start to the end, and do the majority of kids come back and play again next year? Because I think what that shows is stuff is being taught, skills, knowledge being taught to the kids if they're learning, and they're having fun if they're coming back out, because if they don't have fun, they're not going to come back out the next year. So I think those are the 2 things as a varsity coach you're looking for. I want kids to learn, and I want kids to keep playing. I don't want kids to quit when they're in the 4th, 5th grade, and then all of a sudden we get up to high school and you're struggling to have a freshman team, or you don't have hardly good enough numbers to have 7th and 8th grade separate teams and all that. I mean, we have to make this an experience at the younger levels where kids are going to want to continue to play.
I really like the idea of participation. I think that's a good foundation point. So let's kind of move through some different issues, and as we always try to do on Expanding the Zone, we'll tackle these issues and see if we can put some solutions into play. The first issue, once we have kids playing, and we have the participation. The first issue I start to see, Matt, is the scoreboard can be an evil. The score, and please don't get me wrong. There are certain ages and certain games where I think the scoreboard is fine. In fact, I think the scoreboard's important. I think it teaches situation. I think it teaches IQ of the game. I think it teaches different scenarios. But what I mean by scoreboard is the evil is when the winning or what that scoreboard says starts to play a factor in participation, in playing time, and even in a strategy thing. I look at it like this. The problem with the scoreboard in so many areas is if you do not get consistency in all parties involved in coaching, it starts to take the parity out of whack a little bit, and it really disrupts the teaching. Take the sport of volleyball. The easiest way to win third grade volleyball matches is to serve well, and then when the ball comes over, take the very first contact and knock the thing right back over to the opponent, right?
Right.
Because chances are at the third grade level, you see it as high as the 7th and 8th grade level, even with average volleyball teams, they're going to mess up. Okay, they're going to mess up and result in a point. Now, what's that teaching though? You'd rather teach the passer to have some accuracy and try to pass it on target, pass it to your setter. You'd like to see the setter at least recognize where her hitter's coming from and put the ball into a proper spot. Now, depending on what age group we're talking about, I understand you may not have someone really attack and go on the attack and with a solid hit. But my point is, you're trying to teach 3 types of skills, 3 hits, and you're trying to teach them to play volleyball the right way. Well, in doing so, you're probably going to mess up a lot more. And as a result, I think the same thing is true on a ground ball to third base at the coach pitch level. If you throw it to first base, what's going to happen most likely? Probably going to throw it away a lot, right?
Yeah.
You're going to have people, the merry-go-round starts. So what do? We teach kids to field a ground ball time, stick the ball up in the air. And
right.
And so there's some
or you'll see the other team purposely getting a rundown to try to cause them to throw the ball away.
Right.
And it's all about, well, if I do that, we can score a couple extra runs and maybe win this game. Again, it goes to that scoreboard. When score is being kept at any level, people are going to try to manipulate things to win. And at the youth level, that can become dangerous, I think.
Well, I do. And I think what happens is it's that perspective you talked about earlier. What's happened, at least here in our area of Southern Ohio in the last 15 to 20 years, Little League programs have been pulled more from the high school coaches and teachers, and they become more community and events. Now, that's not always bad because the community sometimes can allow you more resources, more help, more manpower in terms of running these things. The only problem I say is you as a varsity basketball coach, when you work with a 4th grader in a basketball practice, you are doing it with 4, 5, 6 years down the line, are you not? Whereas if a Little League coach, if he or she's not careful, they're starting to run that practice with Sunday afternoon in mind, because the game's coming up and the scoreboard's going to be on and we have to compete and we have to do these different things. So what concerns me is when the scoreboard starts to take these strategies and you start to put winning over the cost. Because Matt, to me, it goes back to what we said. Why would it bother you to offer, I don't know if it's like you said, equal playing time, but some playing time? Why would it bother you to hit all 14 people? Why would it bother you to try to allow different people to bring the ball up the court? Why would it bother you to let some different kids play goalie? Why would it bother you if the scoreboard wasn't kind of your end result? Is that a fair assumption in terms of, am I missing something? Is the score totally to blame for that, or is there another factor involved here?
Well, I think whenever score is being kept, winning becomes a priority. Now, I always say it like this, you can't have 2 number 1 priorities. Your number 1 priority is your number 1 priority. You can't say, well, both of these things are my number 1 priority. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Number 1's number 1. So if your number 1 priority is winning, then your number 1 priority isn't skill development, teaching the game, kids having fun. now you may say, well, we do all those things. That's fine. Maybe you do. But what's your number one priority? Because you can't have two of them. So if your number one priority is, hey, I'm going to teach the game the correct way, okay, to use your examples, I'm going to let multiple kids handle the ball. I'm not going to go in and play a 2-3 zone in hopes the other team just jacks up a shot and the third grade misses. I'm going to let some different kids play goalie. I'm going to let some different kids play the infield. If you do that because your number one goal is developing skills, developing talent, giving everyone that chance to participate, if that's your number one priority and you happen to win, okay, then fine, all right. But at least your number one priority, in my opinion, is what it should be. I think the root of all evil in youth sports is the attempting to win, putting winning as the number one priority at that age group. I would argue that I think I'm just going to be honest with you. I think it's somewhat silly that we're playing competitive games in the first and second grade in most sports. Okay, I haven't seen a whole lot of sports that look normal in the first or second grade. Now, so the fact that we keep score at all at those age groups is
so you haven't seen any intense like T-ball games or anything like that?
No, I mean, well, you just brought up T-ball. I'll give you a great example. Okay? Several years ago, I was coaching T-ball. It went great. Whole season long, we play, basically you'd play like 2 innings. An inning consisted of every single kid hitting on each, on each team. So basically every kid's got 2 at bats, right? You play 2 innings, every kid hit each inning. You try to teach kids sort of the positions, like over here's where the shortstop stands, over here's the second base stands. And you know what? We didn't keep score. Parents were cheering on their own players, cheering on the other team's players. Everybody left with a smile on their face. Kids are enjoying it. Well, at the end of the year, some wise guy from a neighboring area decided they're going to have a T-ball tournament. Okay. Now we haven't kept score the whole year. All of a sudden now we're going to play 3 innings and keep score. And you should have seen the difference in the way parents acted, the way coaches acted, because all of a sudden score's being kept. When that score is being kept, well, now the focus is off of having fun, developing your skills. It's on, are we winning?
Well, imagine all of a sudden now safer out or those types of things matter.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. People are losing their mind about a play at the plate in a T-ball tournament where we don't even have umpires. The coaches are calling them. And,
Hey, anybody got a video of that? Can we?
Yeah. And I mean, throughout the whole course of the year, no one would have cared because you're just having fun and playing. I even see it at the high school level. Just to use it as an example, we've had summer scrimmages before where we'll bring a team in the summertime to play a basketball scrimmage. We won't have officials. I won't really have anybody to run the clock. And sometimes the opposing coach and I will just say to each other, hey, why don't we just play? Let's play 20 minutes, give the kids a water break, play another 20 minutes. Let's get an hour and a half of run in here and just work on our skills or whatever. And, when we're not keeping score, it's amazing how the players' attitudes are good. No one's, everybody's a little more positive. Everybody's focused on the process, right, of getting better, because you're not looking up their scoreboard and saying, oh, we're getting beat 16-5, 16-6. You don't know what the score is. So even when things are going badly, you're just sort of sticking with it, getting your work in and getting better. That scoreboard at every level changes everything. My point is, why are we allowing it to change what we're trying to accomplish with first, second, third graders? I just think we could do without the score at those levels. If you want to start keeping score at 4th and 5th grade a little bit, fine. I'd still question, if you shouldn't modify the game a little bit, but I just think you have to be careful how soon you're making it so competitive that there's score being kept all the time.
I love what you said there, and I'm going to come back to that in a little bit because I think there's ways to modify the game, because I think score could really be important. I think as you get a little bit older, you put some kids in positions for some parity and some true competition and where they're matched up really, really well. But that leads me to another point, kind of a part 2 to this particular scoreboard talk. If I were to say the scoreboard is the evil, Matt, I would almost say school versus school scoreboard is evil on steroids. You know what I'm saying? Because here's
Right.
what I find, and I'm talking in-house programs now. I'm talking schools that maybe do in-house volleyball, in-house basketball. Most of your baseball, softball stuff is probably more of a community-based type thing. But I even know sometimes those communities will invite other communities in for tournaments and different things. And I'm telling you, that's at a small school setting, this is the root problem big time in terms of where these third grade teams have become such a factor. These fourth grade teams have become such a factor in terms of where, again, why is the participation out of whack? Well, this league we're in, they only let us put one third grade team in, and I can't take 20 kids that day. So we, again, like you said, we cut and we have such an eye for talent in the third grade that we pick like the top 8 kids, and then we wonder why we don't have a freshman team 4 or 5 years later. So
Well, and let me interrupt you for just a second, because I don't want to. I want to make this point while it's fresh in my mind. You say we have such an eye for talent. I know you're being, you're obviously being sarcastic when you say this. We're trying to. I did an experiment once as a head coach with a friend of mine who had been a junior high coach at our school. At the time, I think we did it with an 8-year sample size, okay? And what we did was we took 8 years of 8th grade basketball, and we took the starters off of those 8th grade teams. So, basically what we thought the 5 best players on that 8th grade team was on each of those 8th grade teams. So he had 40 players. And we looked and said, okay, out of those 40 players, how many of those players ever played varsity basketball? All right, so you're 8th grade, right? I mean, you're only a couple years removed from possibly starting varsity basketball, or starting to really, stick your nose in and compete for a position on the varsity basketball team. How many of those 40 players ever played varsity? Not started varsity, not became I'm talking put the uniform on varsity. And it was exactly half. Exactly 50%. Now think about that, okay? Now, that was my first 8 years at the school I'm currently at. I don't know now, after being there 20 years, I'd have to go back and do the research to see. But at that time, we were basically an 8th grade coach, they were predicting, future success at a 50% clip, right? Because if you're coaching 8th grade, you're probably trying to play kids who you think are going to help the varsity team down the road. We were doing that at a coin flip, basically 50-50. All right. If that's the best we can do by taking 8th graders and predicting varsity success, how in the world are we predicting who we should keep in the 2nd and 3rd grade? We very well may be discouraging kids who grow up to be 6'4", who all of a sudden come into their own and become great athletes. And, oh, man, I wonder why that kid doesn't play basketball. And he's doing well. Maybe he got discouraged in the 3rd or 4th grade, right? Wonder why that kid doesn't play football. Well, maybe he got lit up by a bigger player in the 4th grade because we thought it was a good idea to have tackle football in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. Maybe that kid's like, oh, this isn't for me. Are we putting our kids in positions and situations where we are maximizing the chance that they become varsity players down the road? I think that's crucial if we're talking school-based youth sports.
Absolutely. And when you go school versus school and you're forced to make those selections, I understand by like the 4th or 5th grade, maybe with a young lady, girls are starting to mature a little quicker. Maybe you could eyeball that a little bit closer, but even there, I see a lot of late bloomers, a lot of kids that really improve later on. But like you said, if you're a boy that's going to grow to 6'3", 6'4", 6'5", chances are when you're in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, you're probably not real coordinated. You know what I'm saying? Like as good a player as you were, think about your body type clear back when you were in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade compared to what you were by your sophomore year of high school. I mean, that's some of the factor that I'm talking about here in terms of these things. And here's why I mentioned the school versus school, Matt. To me, what happens is this. 15, 20 years ago, it was more common, I think, all over the state of Ohio. I know we have some listeners from Florida and Pennsylvania and Indiana. I'd love to get some feedback from them in terms of to kind of get a feel throughout the country of Little League sports. But what was happening was most Little League programs were more in-house. And I compare it like this. If let's say with the boys they're messing around or whatever, your house is a little bit of a mess, and I tell you I'm going to stop over, you probably don't think much of it, right? I'm going to stop over. But if all of a sudden, if you guys are going to have some company over, some people that maybe don't come over as often or whatever, what's the first thing you and Amy are going to do? You're going to pick up the house, right? Hey,
right.
throw this stuff here. You're wanting to make an impression.
Yeah, we're not. I'm not cleaning for you. I guarantee you that. We may clean for somebody else.
But it's one of those things where now all of a sudden we've got outside company coming in, right? We got to put our best foot forward. If we were to take the biggest sports thing that happened over the weekend, it was really good TV, was the Tiger and Manning thing versus Mickelson and Brady. Think about that situation there. If those four are out playing golf, I'm sure four guys like that go out and play golf, they're comfortable, whatever. Why all of a sudden was Peyton Manning and Tom Brady is some of the greatest athletes of our lifetime scared to death? Because now all of a sudden they're outside their comfort zone and they're allowing outside people to view it. You follow me there? So what happens is if you're playing in-house and number one, if you're playing in-house, you probably have a little bit more control of the teams. There's probably a little bit more parity, which you'd love to have in terms of competition. Because again, now scoreboard can be healthy, right? Scores are close, and there's still a lot of sportsmanship. Learn to win, learn to lose. Everybody's playing. That's great. But what happens is you get some dynamics. Now all of a sudden, we're no longer facing these enrollment issues and the parity issues in the 7th and 8th grade. We're doing it in the 3rd grade. Okay, so what's happening is, think of the burnout. And when I say burnout, I'm not talking about the kids. I'm talking about, we have parents now every weekend that's driving half hour away just to play a 3rd grade, a 4th grade game, a 5th grade game. No wonder by the time they're 7. Do you remember growing up, Matt, how it used to be a big deal to get on a bus and go play a road game in the 7th grade? Well, now by the time you do that in the 7th grade, you've already done it for 4 years. So to me, I use the terminology evil on steroids is when you get that outside competition, because now all of a sudden when this parent goes to work, it's no longer, hey, in our little league, we had a game the other day and so won, or hey, we won, or we lost, or, we did whatever. Now all of a sudden it's already that school rivalry of, my kid's on this team and we're not winning. So I'm telling you, I see it as a root of a lot of problems. I see it as a root of, we talked about transferring. I see a lot of elite players and elite parents who, by the time they go through it in the 3rd grade, they go through it in the 4th grade, they go through it in the 5th grade, maybe it's volleyball, maybe it's basketball, maybe it's football, whatever it is, you're trying to come up with, at a small school, you're trying to come up with the ability to put an entire team, grade versus grade, or maybe 2 grades versus 2 grades, and you're doing it against schools that are much bigger than you. You're going to have a hard time being competitive at the 3rd, 4th grade. And I'm telling you, it leads to frustration. I see it hurt parent-coach relationships with parents that, you don't even hardly know them yet, right? They're kids in the 3rd, 4th grade. You don't have that direct contact with them, but that frustration sets in and that burnout sets in. So do you follow what I'm saying in terms of when the other thing that hurts in participation is when you go outside of your own organization, now all of a sudden you're strapped by someone else's rules. So it hurts getting cut, it hurts playing time, it hurts scoreboard, it hurts rules, it hurts all these dynamics of the game and therefore the competition.
Well, it goes back to what I was saying before with your number one priority. You're not going to convince me that when it comes to putting together a team for a travel league or whatever, you're not going to convince me that your number one priority isn't winning. Because why else are you choosing the 12 best players to go play if it's a basketball team, right? Why else are you doing that? Because you're wanting to put the best team you can put out there to win. Because if the number one priority was developing talent, you would tell that travel league, hey, listen, you're either going to let me put 2 teams in this league or we're not putting any in it.
Right.
You know, you would start to take more of a role of looking out for your school, because like you said, when you fall victim to what the league wants you to do, well, you can only put 1 team in here. You got to do it this way. Well, now you're not doing what's best for your school. And if you're a head coach, your job is to do what's best for your school, to put your school in a situation where your kids benefit, the future of your program benefits. So yeah, you can't convince me at all when you're making cuts, basically, that you're not making winning the absolute number one priority. And like you said, a big reason why is because you want to be able to say, well, you know, we had the best 3rd grade team in this league. We had the best 4th grade team in this league. We had the best 5th grade team. That's not what it's about. I would rather say, hey, we had 32 kids. We had 3 teams of 10 in this league. Now, because we split everybody up, we didn't win the league or whatever, but man, we had 30 kids. What's more impressive to you? Hey, we won the 4th grade championship, or we had 32 kids participating. We had 40 kids participating. That to me is impressive, because what that tells you is you are doing what you do in a dynamic enough way where kids want to be a part of it. And that ultimately is the most important thing.
Well, so let's review real quick. So we talked about the solution. The first thing has to be participation. Got to have kids involved. Second thing, we're not against score. I think we just have to have an understanding of when and how is the scoreboard useful, and what dynamics can the scoreboard start to cause other problems that you better be aware of. And here's when you were talking there, I couldn't help but think about like a Little League baseball. A lot of times people will say, well, hey, if we put all of our best players together, we'd have this team, and this team. And what I always get the opportunity when I speak to Little League coaches and I try to organize it, I'll be like, yeah, but I would rather us have 3 different or 4 different teams in-house, to where now all of a sudden we control the environment, we control the learning, and therefore we can still, don't get me wrong, we can still have score, we can still have winning, we can still have losing, but we do it in a more controlled environment to where we make sure the right things are being taught and the right things are determining that winning and losing in terms of the coaches we have. Because the way I look at that, Matt, is if I have 4 different baseball teams in the Little League, well, now all of a sudden I have 4 to 8 different kids developing as catcher. I probably have 8 to 12 different pitchers developing, right?
Right.
I have 4 different kids learning to play shortstop, probably more, because most of your shortstop or second baseman are probably some of your pitchers. So my point is, now all of a sudden, instead of running out our 9 or 10 best hitters just because they're the best hitter in the 4th grade, now I have like 40, 45 different kids getting the hit every
Right.
game. Because again, like we said, especially with young men, you know, what your body looks like in the 4th grade may not be quite what it looks like when you're a sophomore in high school. So, you know, those are the things that become very, very important. So I guess the point that I would ask you here in my next big rock is what I'm calling progression. Why the rush? If we're going to have to play so early, and again, I'm far more for skill development and some different things like that. But I realize that we live in a more rush society, as I said earlier, got to have it right now type of thing. But don't we have to at least do something with the competition? Maybe it's rules, maybe it's the sport dynamic. Talk to me a little bit about what we at least can do to where we're not asking the 3rd graders, and let's face it, in most sports, we're asking the 3rd graders to pretty much do exactly what the 8th graders are doing in terms of competition. And to me, that's way too big a gap. And that's got burnout for players, burnout for parents, burnout for coaches, burnout for everybody involved if we don't find at least some progression. Because if I'm teaching math skills to a 3rd grader, I'm still not teaching the same math skill as an 8th grader, right? There's a progression along the way of skills that build up and a foundation that still sits there. So what's the solution in terms of finding a progression that can help kids avoid this burnout?
You have to modify the games themselves in two ways, really. I mean, or maybe I should say for two purposes. One, modify them so that based on the kid's size and skill levels, they can have fun and still play a version of the game that makes sense. Okay, so one side's a physical thing, if that makes sense, and the other side is more of like what you're talking about, I think, which is more of a mental or emotional side of having something to look forward to next, rather than we're doing it all right now, we're just going to do the same thing every year. So that was my whole argument with like this keeping score a minute ago, was if you're going to have first grade basketball league, which I don't necessarily agree with. I think at that age, the best you can do is just skill development. I don't see a way, and some people will disagree with me, but I've watched enough first graders try to play a game of basketball in my life, that at my youth camps and stuff like that, it doesn't really resemble what we want basketball to look like, where I think it'd be more beneficial to do skill work. But if you're going to have first graders trying to play a game, don't keep score at that age. Let's just do away with the score. Let's say, you know what? Hey, when you guys become third graders, we're going to start keeping score a little bit. What's that do? It gives kids a chance to look forward to something, right? Hey, when you guys become sixth graders, seventh graders, whatever, now you're going to play against other schools in a trial, like what you were saying earlier. When we were in seventh grade, taking that first road trip to a neighboring school was a cool thing, right? Because we hadn't done that. Well, now these guys are doing it all the time. So I guess mentally and emotionally giving kids a progression, but then also to modify the game from a physical standpoint. In other words, let's take, again, I'm going to stick with basketball as my example here for a minute, because I think basketball is the absolute worst out of all these sports in terms of modifying the game. If you think about it, baseball does a pretty good job of modifying the game based on age, right?
Yeah,
You play on a smaller field,
mm-hmm.
Like
kids don't pitch till they're 9, probably.
Right. 8 and under, the coach is pitching to the kids. The field's smaller, all these things.
Well, and think
golf.
about, not to interrupt you, but think about baseball. We just talked about this on our baseball show, 2 weeks ago. The hardest one is junior high. Why? Because seventh graders aren't ready to necessarily play on the high school field. That's when you run into your biggest roadblock.
Well, and again, why do they do that? Maybe because of facilities, right? It's just easier. You have the field, but right. So you basically, there's a build up there. Take golf. We love the game of golf, right? When kids start playing golf as a youngster, they have different tee boxes. If you start playing as a 7, 8-year-old, you may tee off from the 100-yard marker or whatever. Then junior high, maybe you're back playing the red tee, ladies tees, or whatever. There's a progression as you're learning the game. Why? To make the game fun. If you took an 8-year-old and said, "Here you go, partner, 410-yard par 4, have at her," well, they're not having much fun at that, right? But if all of a sudden they can tee off from a different tee box. I played in a father-son scramble one time, and my son got to tee off from like the 150-yard marker, and so we used his ball a few times, right? We used his drive. He's like, "Dad, I'm out driving you." It made it fun for him because of the tee box he was allowed to play. So we modified the game for physical skills and for enjoyment. But in basketball, what do? We just throw a bunch of first graders out on a high school floor and say, "Have at her, guys." And maybe even shoot it on 10-foot rim. I know only 2 of you can hit the rim, but go ahead and fire it up there. We don't lower the rims. We don't shorten the floor. How about playing a game inside the volleyball lines with 7-foot rims for that age? How about this, Shane? Would there be anything wrong with second grade if you're going to have basketball play 3-on-3, half court? Just to learn.
Touching it.
Yeah, more kids are touching it. You learn spacing, you learn cutting, you learn screening. It's not just running up and down the floor, like just wild heathens because we don't know what's going on, and the best player has the ball in his hands the whole time. Again, we have to make these little changes for the sport to be successful. And I think some sports get it. But I think some sports at the youth level don't. I think basketball is probably one of the guiltiest parties in not modifying the game enough, based on age and size and all that.
One of the things that, in terms of progression, I hear from parents, and a lot of times these are some of our most talented young kids, is the fact that when it comes to skill work, when it comes to individual workouts, when it comes to clinic work, camps type of a camp type of setting, that, well, he or she doesn't get a lot out of that. They need to play a little bit more. They need to do different things, and that always surprises me a little bit in terms of work ethic, in terms of skill set. Something that comes to my mind.
Let me stop you. Who says that? Who do you hear say that?
Well, what
Parents?
I'm saying, parents of that really talented fourth or fifth grader.
Right.
What
Well,
happens is,
why do they say that? Because when those kids go play in a game, they dominate, and that gives that parent a chance to put their chest out and say, "Look at my son, he's great." I'm just being
right,
honest.
or what happens, school versus school. Well, so and so I work with, their kid, they're playing in this league here, and here, and man, if we don't do that right now, we're going to fall behind. We're behind. We got to go do what they're doing. And my argument to that is, why not use an opportunity to take someone that talented? There's all sorts of opportunities for you to go out there and advance. I know there's a lot of a different, club volleyball. There's a lot of different, travel, baseball, softball types of things beyond what we're doing. Same way with basketball. These different things. There's more and more opportunities for young kids. But the point I was going to make, Matt, was 2 weekends ago. Remember, I mentioned the golf thing that was on TV this week. Not as many people, because it didn't have the four names of Mickelson, Woods, and Brady and Manning. But 2 weekends ago, Ricky Fowler, a young player named Matthew Wolff, Dustin Johnson, and Roy McIlroy. So obviously some really big names to the golf community were playing a fundraiser, and they were out playing, and it was kind of cool. Here are these four PGA Tour guys. They're carrying their own bag, right? So they're not in carts like these guys were last week. They're walking. They're carrying their own bag. They're out playing 2-on-2, little competition, and they were mic'd up a little bit, and they were talking. And Ricky Fowler, who has some of the greatest short game skills in the world, he was being serious. I took it as funny. I started laughing out loud. He was talking about how, well, these are the types of shots for every time I hit it. He was talking about a short game. These are some of the shots that, for every time I hit it in a match, I've probably literally hit that shot anywhere from 1 to 200 times in preparation. And it just blew my mind. He's like, so like right now in my practice, he's like, I've probably only put, 2-3 hours a week in on my short game, where usually I'm probably closer to 6 or 7 when I'm really gearing up for a major or something like that. And I'm sitting there thinking, what in the world? Like, here I am, a total hack. I'm a bogey golfer. And I wonder why I can't just chip the golf ball onto the green and make no worse than bogey. And here's one of the greatest players in the world saying, well, in preparation for this shot, I hit it, 100-200 times. And I'm
Right.
thinking, I hit it 0. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
don't practice, I play. So my point is, with the younger generation, I would challenge some of these parents to slow way down. And if you have that talented of young man or a young woman, to allow them the opportunity to develop their skills and to develop a work ethic. Because I don't know what your experience has been, but as I've tried to marry old school and new school, what I have found, some of the most valuable situations for me with today's little league kids is individual workouts. If I can get an opportunity to work with a baseball player or a basketball player when they're in like the 5th, 6th grade, I love to develop that rapport with them to where I can start some individual workouts that we can develop throughout the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, because that's when they're really teachable. A lot of times what happens is, by the time they get to high school, it's too late. The social aspects start to come over. They start to get their driver's license. They start to get a lot of things. So to me, the value of repetition just jumps out at me full go. And I think it's something we completely missed the boat on. And I know we want to play. I have no problem with competition. I just think there has to be, like you said, a progression. So anything we're missing there on those big rocks, Matt, before we get into our final thoughts?
Well, no, this one's important to me, because this is really one of my non-negotiables too. Is the idea of, at the youth level, how I think we have it backwards, where there ends up being more play than there is practice, and there should really be much more practice than there is play if we're truly trying to develop skills. I mean, I think what you said earlier, a lot of times the competition part of this youth sports is driven by the parents of the best players, because if you have a kid who's a great player, then it's fun for you to go watch him dominate the game. Oh man, look at my son, he had 28 today, and I want to play more games so I can watch him dominate. The problem with that is the great players, are going to be great in a lot of cases. There'll be times where they end up not panning out, but a lot of times those great players will be driven to be great. They'll be great. But as a school-based youth program, what are your goals? Your goals are to develop numbers, to develop depth, to develop talent, not to watch one kid be great or two kids, but to develop the whole group, right? So what we've done is, because we've let the thing be driven by the parents of the best players, we failed miserably, in my opinion, in the idea of more practice than play. Consider this, okay? In a high school varsity basketball season, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 70 practices, okay? Depending on your tournament run and all that, 65, 70 is where the number usually ends up. So you play whatever, let's just say 23, 24 games. So basically you're
minimum of 23.
Yeah, so you're practicing, I guess the easiest way to say this is, you are practicing 3 times as much as you play. All right?
Okay. Yeah.
You're practicing 3 times as much as you play at the level, in terms of school sports, that is supposed to be the most competitive, right? The varsity level, where really winning does matter at that level. I still don't think it should be your number one priority, even at that level necessarily, because there's other things you should worry about. But let's face it, at the varsity level, we do keep records. We do, there is winning involved. But at that level, then we're practicing 3 times as much as we play. But you're telling me a second grader should have 1 practice a week and 1 game, or 1 practice a week and 2 games on the weekend? I mean, what kind of sense does that make? I mean, think about that for a minute. I mean, we're trying to act like that. We act like we're running youth sports to develop skill, but we're practicing once a week and then playing a couple games on the weekend. That makes no sense. We should be practicing 3 times a week and playing at most once. But we don't do that. And the reason will be, well, we just don't have time to fit another practice in. Well, we have time to fit a game in. So if you have time to fit a game in, how about let's play a game once every 2 weeks, and let's practice, 2 times a week. People would lose their mind, right? Oh, the kid's got to play. We want to see him play games. Well, again, what are we trying to accomplish here? If we're trying to, again, you can't have 2 number one priorities, Shayne. If your number one priority truly is to develop talent, then that will show, because you'll practice more than you play. You like some of the things we talked about today, you'll make sure that every kid gets to participate. If that's your number one goal, then those things will show up. But it's pretty obvious that our number one priority is most of the times winning. That's why these things don't show up. The other thing, with the practice versus play, I think right now we're in a generation where these kids are not growing up in unstructured play like we did as kids at times too, which I think helps develop skill. Like, if you think about it, we learned, and I think we talked about this on a previous show, maybe the baseball show, but we learned a lot of how to play baseball by either watching baseball, by playing wiffle ball in the backyard, right? We learned a lot of how to play basketball out in the driveway, or how to play football by playing. We invented games, if you think about it, right? We'd play 2-on-2 football in the backyard. I can remember as a kid playing baseball with aluminum bats and tennis balls, and developing our own field. And we'd play 2-on-2 to where if you fielded a ground ball and you threw it to the pitcher before the runner made it to first, he was out, right? Remember Ghost Men? I would love right now. People our age. There's younger people watching this show right now or listening, saying, "What in the heck are they talking about?"
No idea.
But if you're 40 years old, I guarantee you know what a ghost man is. And like a buddy of mine says the ghost man should be in the Hall of Fame, right? Because like they should put the ghost man in Cooperstown because the greatest base runner ever, right? But like, we had to invent stuff like the ghost man so that we could have 2-on-2 baseball. I would love to survey the 8U team that I helped coach in baseball. I may do this because we're going to hopefully be able to play fall baseball this year. I'm going to take a survey of our 13 kids. Raise your hand if you know who the ghost man is in baseball. And I will bet you a steak dinner that I'll be shocked if 3 or 4 kids know who the ghost man is. All right. My point to all this rambling is this. We had unstructured play. We had fun. We went out in our yard and played. We learned how to play. We practiced.
Well, we had to modify rules.
Yeah, the same thing we're talking about here. But we had to do it because I guess in that generation, we weren't provided structured play opportunities like as much as they are today. Now, here's the thing. Had people provided us with that, we probably would have taken advantage of it, right? If someone would have come to us and said, hey, do you want to play 35 travel basketball games this year? I probably would have been like, heck yeah, man, let's go do it. But like, that doesn't mean that it's right. It just means that, there'll be some kids that say, yeah, that's for me. But that doesn't mean that we're doing it the right way and we're developing kids at as good a rate as we should be.
Well, there's no doubt about it. And when you talk about modifying rules, I would really challenge our youth programs to think about opportunities to still put competition in play, still put scoreboard in play, but give everybody an opportunity to impact that score by modifying some of your rules. Like one of the greatest things I've ever seen utilized in Little League basketball is take 10 kids from each team and at halftime have them go and shoot 2 free throws for the scoreboard. So some of those kids, let's face it, Matt, in 5th grade, not every kid's going to be able to get a shot off as easy. Some of the best players are going to handle and get shots of whatever.
Gives every kid a chance to score.
Every kid. But it also, think about what it does as a coach. Hey, you got to practice your free throws. Free throws are really important. Yeah. You're going to impact that score. So it gives everybody an opportunity. And again, from a competition standpoint, it adds something in. I've seen different places utilize some different base running rules where they'll take some different kids. Hey, take in coach pitch. You're going to take one of your 6-year-olds. You're going to start them at second base this inning. Give them an opportunity to run the bases because, again, they may not put the ball in play and get the opportunity. How many times they reach second base? You know what I'm saying? So you're putting them in situations to still keep competitive balance, but you're giving kids a chance. And I tell you what, I see some of the best Little League coaches. I'm blessed as a varsity coach over the last decade to watch some of these kids grow up. And we've had some incredible Little League coaches. One of the guys on my staff named Jason Metler, when he was his kids were coming up through, he used to do such a good job down on the coach pitch level. He would throw the ball kind of hard to them, straight, and he would talk to parents about how, hey, the year goes on, they're gonna learn, they're gonna time it up, and slowly but surely they start to time it up a little bit, start to hit it a little bit. I'll see other coaches, ground ball, we're gonna field it and throw it. I mean, it may not be helping us win or lose, but by the end of the year, guess what? Those are the teams that can now field it and throw it, and start to do some of those things. So to me, the level of competition, because Matt, I don't want to let coaches off the hook here. I am concerned to no end when I talk to different people about ideas I have. I understand when I talk to a Little League coach. I can remember about 10, 11, 12 years ago when this travel ball started in terms of basketball and some different volleyball and so forth. They'd say, yeah, Shane, but think about it. When they're in-house, they're all playing against each other. Now you're going to have a chance to take the 7 or 8 best players, and they're going to go play other schools, and they're going to get better over the next 4 or 5 years. And I just wanted to grab my head and think, oh, what are you talking about? What if someone doesn't grow? What if someone's dad gets transferred? What if, you're picking 7 or 8 kids now, you better be an incredible eye for talent because they may not be. So what's happened in the last decade is I feel like it's a direct result and this is everywhere. And again, I would love to get feedback from outside our area, but in our area, I know for sure this has happened. Numbers are down in 7th grade. Numbers are down in 8th grade. Certain sports, we used to have freshman teams. We no longer do. Certain sports, we're starting to struggle to have JV. And give it
Right.
4 or 5 more years, we may not even have JV.
Right.
And it's becoming a serious problem in terms of numbers. But what concerns me is there's a lot of even varsity coaches now that have tried to adapt, and I almost don't know if they want to have a freshman team or JV team. So I would really challenge some varsity coaches not to give up on this. To me, strengthen numbers, strengthen opportunity. It strengthens your off-season stuff. It strengthens your practice situation. It strengthens your entire program. And let's face it, when in a place of education, it's the student athlete. You're cheating a lot of kids. I assume we all do what we do because we believe in what sports teach, right? So why in the world would we not want more and more kids to have the opportunity to take involved? So I guess in terms of final thought, Matt, I want to hear from you in terms of what we've given some solutions. We kind of summarized some things at the beginning. Let's come back now and summarize what would be the takeaway that you would want coaches at any level to take away and really look themselves in the mirror and concentrate on when you think of youth sports?
I guess for me, it would just come down to try to put it in its simplest terms is I go back to what are your priorities? What's your number one priority? What's your number two priority? If you were to get out a piece of paper and you would list, here's what I want to accomplish. And then I think your actions have to back up your words. If your number one priority is, okay, in this youth program, we want to develop numbers, we want to teach skill, well, then your actions have to back that up. You can't then turn around and say, we're going to cut, we're going to choose the 10 best players and go with them. We're going to play 3 times more than we practice. You can't do it. Then your behaviors aren't aligned with your thoughts or with your goals or whatever. So I think that would to me be the biggest thing. And I think that ultimately too, as a varsity coach, and I think this is what you were getting at a minute ago, but I think sometimes it's like, man, this is an unwinnable battle. I can't fight this. I can't, there's nothing I can do about it. Youth sports is its own animal now. And, a lot of varsity coaches, I feel like just kind of wash their hands of it a little bit. And I think that as a varsity coach, I think we have to stand up sometimes and say, okay, no, this isn't what I want this to be in our school. I can't control what happens with parents that want to get kids together for elite teams in the summer or travel teams, whatever. But if our school name is going to be across the front of this shirt, I want to make sure we're doing it in a way that represents what we stand for, what we want. And so I think sometimes varsity coaches have to do that. I've seen it, in football. I've talked to football coaches. I have some friends who are really good football coaches. I mean, a couple come to mind. One guy has coached Mr. Football before. A guy was close to winning a state championship once, just a guy I know from another school. And he told me one time, he's like, if I had it my way, there wouldn't be tackle football till the 7th grade. But I'm not fighting that battle down there. Yeah, man. And there's a guy that probably had the power to fight it. And say, let's play flag football. That's what he's saying. He thought it should be flag up until the 7th grade. But he didn't want to fight that battle. I guess my point is, if we think as varsity coaches that it's important enough, then we have to fight that battle, and I think if you're a youth coach, you've got an awesome responsibility, and you need to take it seriously. And I think that, again, you need to ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish here? What's the most important thing I'm doing?
Well, I think that's well said. And I think in closing for me, I always find myself in these shows, Matt, looking for balance. I always find myself, that's what I've really enjoyed about Expanding the Zone, is we debate these topics. We obviously state what we think's wrong, but in every situation we try to put a solution out there. And I think we've done that pretty fairly here throughout episode number 8. But for me, the balance in this one is there's always going to be a marriage of old school and new school. So have those absolutes. I thought you said that really well. find a way for participation, find a way to allow every kid an opportunity to be a part of it. Understand that we probably live in a day where there's going to be a little bit more urge for competition and scoreboard, but can we modify? Can we get controlled settings? Can we do the necessary things to help those? But then what I'd really challenge coaches, and I would really challenge the upper level coaches at the high school level, don't quit. I think you just said this. Don't quit on it. Look for opportunities. There's still nothing that's more enjoyable to me, Matt, as a high school coach than those 3 or 4 summer days of camp with the
Right.
younger levels. You
Right.
know, who's to say that's only allowed to be once a year? So like if you've lost a little control, who's to say we couldn't do a little bit more of those? Some clinic days, some workout days, some opportunities to go get involved in the little leagues. Hey, ask the coaches, can I come down and do some tee work with some of your little league kids? Can I come down and do some soft toss? Can I come in and give a little free throw shooting clinic? Could I come in with all the volleyball players and do some passing drills? You know, whatever it may be, look for opportunities to develop some of that skill work. And I think we'll continue to grow and find some things. But I do have a concern of numbers. I do see a lot of kids, for lack of better words, just getting robbed or cheated out of the opportunity to experience junior high sports, to experience high school sports. It's something obviously I've dedicated an entire adult career to. I believe in it wholeheartedly, and it just kills me to see these different programs. When we first started, getting 25, 30 kids out for 7th grade sports, where now in some cases there's 6 or 7. I know there was one program that when I first got into education, that's not very far from us here, I think about an hour away, where they had 2 7th grade teams.
Right.
Where now they're trying to just put a team together. You know what I mean? It's a situation that it's certainly a problem. It's certainly an issue. So, well, Matt, I don't want to cut you off. Your notebook clear there? Everything that you wanted to mention? We good to get out of here this week?
Yeah, I think so. I think we covered everything we want to cover, and it's a topic that's not, it's not a black and white issue all the time. It's not. There's going to be debate. Hopefully, we hear some feedback from people, and maybe we'll touch on some things before we start our next topic next week. Maybe we can go over some feedback that we get on this or whatever to begin next week's show. But no, I enjoyed it. Hopefully someone got something out of it, and looking forward to next week.
Well, that's a great point. This is one of those topics that far more people are going to be interested in, because let's face it, little league sports, either growing up or now with kids of your own, certainly it kind of connects to you, maybe even more so than some of our other show topics. So quick contact information. If you're listening to us on podcast, hey, go check us out on YouTube. It's SVC Sports Zone Shayne. Get a chance to see us face to face each week and listen to us, and we utilize some different things on the screen. If you're watching us on YouTube, go check us out on pretty much wherever you get your podcasts. We're out there, and love to have you. So on that note, love to get some feedback. Check us out on Twitter, Facebook, svcsportzone.com, and drop us a message, or let us know on email at admin1@svcsportzone.com. So again, Matt, appreciate it. Great topic. Hope to get some feedback, and we'll get together and do it again here soon on Expanding the Zone. Thanks, everybody.